I mean, I will say that I absolutely hate all the memes that are like, "Oh, it's 2020 all over again." That I'm really tired of seeing.
Yeah, no, because in 2021 that was 2020 all over again, but not all over. It was just part two.
Part two.
It was, yeah. So what do you think? Is 2022 will be part three? I hope not, because at this point it's like, no.
I mean, I think what I will say is, I remember this time last year, I was commenting on your fantastic Christmas shirt. Nothing better than,
I know.
an Israeli that was wearing a Christmas t-shirt.
T-shirt.
Yes. I mean, that was pretty awesome. So I remember that. I think if you had asked me, I think about what has transpired though. Stop thinking about predictions, but what has transpired between literally the last year since we did this? I mean, what I wouldn't have guessed is that our Greek, alphabet would be getting so good. I mean, it's like amazing. Like this time last year, we talked about COVID. We couldn't tell you a variant name though. We just called it COVID. And now Delta wasn't even a thing, right? Delta was an airline. Delta was not a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, let alone like Omicron. Yeah, exactly.
What's next? What's next in the alphabet? Are we reaching Zeta already or not yet? Because I remember, so engineering, you have a lot of Greek alphabet. There is a point actually that they're using the Hebrew alphabet because, hey, someone was Jacobian, right? You have alpha as aleph and stuff like that. And every time that there is someone, usually it was on the math, so let's assume this Greek letter, and you go like, holy shit, it's not really scary, but the fact that they're using those Greeks alphabet and you have capital and lowercase, that's the scary part. It's that this new unknown.
I do think this reminds me a lot of like hurricane naming, right? At some time in every season. I don't know when that happens. Like when is the official list of hurricane names or storm names actually, sort of like done? Is it, how far in advance do they, sort of like, do they do this? But it makes you wonder now, is there like an official, here's what's next? Because they clearly can't do certain names. And I think that was the whole point of Omicron, is they didn't want to pick something that was going to screw up everything.
They skipped skipped two of them. It's not, we don't want to call it she, so let's keep the one before. It's like, with all due respect to the leader of the biggest power in the world, the country. So, yeah. But going, because, I'm big in tradition, so I was looking for that Christmas t-shirt, Under Armour, but apparently I used it and it's in the laundry. So I apologize. I picked this one. I hope it's good. It has the California spirit in it.
It does. It does.
Like it's short sleeve and it's fine.
Yes. And slightly tropical. Makes me feel like we're about to spend New Year's on a beach or something.
So that was the plan. So ideally tomorrow, so we are after Christmas, before the New Year's. Apparently my wife has a conference in Hawaii, which at this point is like a big question mark. We are trying to figure out how do we cancel, if we even have the flight. And yeah, so this is more in the memory of me not going to Hawaii.
Yeah. Yes. Insert sad emoji, barf face. Yogi Berra, like
with a mask and 3 jabs and everything, and you go like, do I really want to be in Honolulu doing this new surge of cases? Not really.
But we could have a top 10 list of places that would be worse to be, during this surge of cases.
So tell me what's going on in New York, if we're talking about that. And then we'll actually talk about insurance, because that's most likely why people are tuning in.
I thought people tune in just to see us talk about a whole bunch of irrelevant things, kind of like the Jay and Gilad show doing sports. They like, eventually we'll get to the sports scores, the top plays. We'd be a great, sort of like a talk show morning radio drive. Oh, you came to listen to the music. Hold on, we're going to see how long we can do to talk this out, and then eventually play a song. Right? That's us.
Yeah, that can work. That can work, sort of. Yeah, I see that happening. It's like the biggest problem here. I don't know sports, seriously.
It's okay.
So let's talk about, so in terms of traditions, that's the tradition, instead of bringing you babkas when I'm in New York, because I don't know. I was in New York. It was great. I've been actually in New York 3, if not 4 times since June. But let's wait a few weeks so this spike will pass.
Yeah.
By the way, how is it?
I mean,
how's the city?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was thinking about the name of this of your show, right? It's like InsurTech Talk, and I was thinking we're going to put the talk in InsurTech Talk. Maybe not the InsurTech Talk, maybe the talk piece. Like New York, I think New York is actually fine. I mean, I think the difference between, that's the good news, bad news. Like the bad news is, oh my God, we're doing this again. Like, the fatigue of this thing like really gets to you. But the good news is like the feel is so much different. It doesn't feel like a crazy surge is happening. Like it really is this like dichotomy, because on the one hand you have every single person is like testing positive, but on the other hand, the only thing that makes it seem like that's happening is longer lines to get tested. So I would say, in the thinking optimistically, thing here, like there aren't closures, like the protocols are working, kids are still in school, and ultimately it's just, and all of this I think is triggered by the fact that it is acting the way we would hope a virus would act over time, which is greater transmissibility, but lower severity of, like the symptoms. It's like my wife and I, we've read the New York Times a lot, and we're almost ready to like give up on them, because it's like they can't make it worse than it's just not that bad the way it was before. But it's like every headline is still trying to find a way to like make it a little bit scary.
Okay, so let's do something that I'm sure that you'll be happy about and connect between 2 brands. So how was ITC?
Oh man, ITC was great, and I will say that it's gotten only better thanks to Omicron. Here I was in the months up to ITC. I remember it was sometime in either late June or early July where it became clear that this Delta thing was going to be a problem. Our sort of expectation and hopes that there would be almost no COVID implications to the show. It was becoming clear that would not be the case. Don't think we would have predicted the international travel implications as a result. But when I think about 6,000 people being there, you think about the energy, you think about the conversations that happened, the smile on faces. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. And part of the reason it was beautiful is that this community is just such a unique one and a special one.
Yeah, and I was privileged, and thank you again, to include. I had my interview desk way at the end of the expo hall, and talking with the different startups as they go off stage. And basically whatever Jen told me, it's like, oh, you need to interview. This is the list of the CEOs and founders, etc., which was fantastic. And do we want to name names? Because
name any names that you want. I will absolutely have to name the sponsor. It was actually one of the fun ones we didn't anticipate. It was the Talk Desk, sponsored by and brought to you by Talk Desk. Not often do you have an idea, and one of our ideas was, we've never had a studio on set. We have all these amazing people that come to ITC. We have sessions, but we don't have like a studio to capture additional content. And we were up in the air on whether we wanted to do it, had the bandwidth to do it, the space to do it. And, along comes Talk Desk saying, everything seems to be sold out. Do you have anything that we can do? I mean, how often does that happen? Your name is Talk Desk. Yep, we are going to create the Talk Desk. And thank you for being gracious enough to put you to work there at ITC.
Well, it was my pleasure. First of all, it's like talking to people. That's more or less what I do most of the time. If it's on this medium, or hey, I want to introduce this startup to that investor, that startup to another startup, this carrier to a potential distribution, and everyone is part of this big, amazing community that we have. And, with TalkDesk, it was fantastic. 3 cameras, 2 professional camera crew, camera people, camera, whatever that, local, the newer staff, they gave all the tips like, this is how you deal with the Vegas desert, right?
Well, admit I came back after ITC, and people would ask me like, what is one of the things you're most proud of? And it was, I didn't get COVID, because I felt like that would have been a bad look. If I had gotten COVID while at ITC, it would have been a bad look. So I was actually very happy at it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I
I think that the worst thing that people would like, and that's the previous comment about a brand associate, you really don't want to be, it's a super spreader event, especially when it's like, oh my God, 6,000 people, everyone is just so happy and pumped to be there. And it was fun. It was great seeing people for more than a year, almost 2 years since we last saw them. It was very exciting.
Yeah. It's certainly how I felt. Now, I think I would say I'm curious about you, if there were any companies that you met while you were there that, sort of like really stuck out to you, the ones that you interviewed. I would say one of the things that I took away from it were, there's a lot of things, but two things for me were, I had several people come up to me and say, this is great. You have to do an ITC in LATAM and for LATAM. And that was like exciting. I always love when we get unsolicited, sort of suggestions, and it's hard not to. When you look at that fintech, look at a company like Nubank that just, sort of like IPO'd. It is easy for us to think of, what happens here and certainly as being the center, but there's so much that happens not just in the U.S. that will eventually impact the U.S. and vice versa. And the other one was I was talking to one of my interviewees. I did a handful, just like you did. And they talked about how many meetings they had at ITC that were about capacity and sort of meeting their capacity partners. And I must say, like, I never really expected that because, right, capacity isn't always a tech, sort of a tech thing. But so much of the companies, one of the other ones that, I spoke to, lots of new MGAs, new products. And at the end of the day, like, for them to be enabled, it is about capacity. So one of the things that I hope we're going to be able to do for ITC 2020, what year? 2022, is a mini summit around capacity and having people connect on that, finding their partners there.
Yep. Because when we talk about the connections, right, InsurTech Connect, it's not just, it started with a vision and we talked about it and we talked with Caribou about that. It was that, can we bring the technology and connect them to the industry? And it grows at this point. It's going to a certain point that it's like, okay, what are we, and we talked about it. What do we connect? Are we connecting the technology? Are we connecting to customers? Are we connecting capital? Are we connecting capacity? So when we are, usually it's people, I like to call it the 3 C's,
yes,
the customers, capital, and
the
capacity.
3 C's. Yes.
It's, I don't like it and I like it. And the only reason I'm calling it the 3 C's is because I've never worked for any consulting company, right? One of the big consultants, never been there, but it's like every time that you meet one of them with their presentations, you always have 3 things. And they itemize and go like, yeah, you cause me to cringe at this point, but let me use it because
that's right there, cringing.
Okay, in the 4th C is cringing. Then you have chocolate, and then we can go. It's like 5. We can find more things in C. I'm sure that's Caribou 5. It's very interesting that we see now in cyber that most of them reach their capacity in cyber. They are trying to figure out other solutions, other MGAs, the ones that are already in cyber are, building themselves to other line of businesses. Corvus is an example of that. But I think that's good enough on that topic. Although it's finally we're talking about insurance.
Yes. Although wait a second, I got the 2 of the C's. I got capital. We got What were the other C's? I should know this.
Capital, capacity, and consumer or customers or
Customers. Okay.
yeah, no. It's like if you're a startup, you're looking to meet a carrier or
Oh man,
someone who will, if you're a SaaS, most of your sponsors are service providers. So they are looking for customers.
I was just thinking of all the C's that you said, cyber, that you put in there, right? I mean, there are so many. Cloud. Okay, well, this could get
Okay.
tedious. Yeah, this could get tedious. Probably already has gotten past
Cumulus.
or sort of whacking this thing, and it's we should have already moved on, there.
Yeah, most I'll add animation of like seas flying
Seas
if I can
flying
find
everywhere.
something
That'll make
like
it fun.
that.
Yes, a little.
Oh yeah,
like,
most definitely.
Did he really say "see" again? Or like bingo? If we say one more
Certainly.
time, yeah, like buzzword bingo.
Oh, that's going to be a drinking game.
Yeah. You sunk my battleship, or somehow that's with a C.
Well, it's more of a carrier than.
Yeah. Oh, battleship carrier. That was a good one.
I'm trying.
Good.
English, so difficult. During ITC, we also had Blueprint on the third floor.
We did.
And now with all the fact that I advocated and pushed Blueprint and we had a few people, to the cross-pollination and all stuff, and pollination has no C. I didn't have the opportunity to go to the third floor beside what was it, Sunday or Saturday to check how things are up and when they set it up. How was Blueprint? How was the feedback from Vic and the team?
So I have to tell you that Blueprint was fantastic. I mean, it actually was better than I was, sort of expecting it. I had anticipated, and for those that don't know, sort of like Blueprint, oh man, Gilad, I'm walking into this one. It's another C1. So, sort of the parent operating company for us is Connective. There you go, with a C. And, ITC has been such a force. It has been such a joy that in a lot of ways it sort of has overshadowed the fact that we as a company, that our passion is beyond insurance, and it really is back to connecting and the connections that get made, and hence the name for Connective. And that as part of Connective, we have several other shows in our portfolio, one of which that we launched at the same time as ITC in the real estate tech space. And I thought it made a lot of sense to launch at the same time because especially when you think about venture, a lot of venture is, looks at real estate tech and prop tech as well as just, sort of insure tech. Similarly with kind of especially corporate venture capital, you think about like life insurance is a really interesting example. And it's beyond life insurers, obviously. But you think about premium dollars that get collected and they have to go somewhere. Well, real estate is a big asset class for insurers. And real estate tech is kind of a look into what's happening into this, sort of $1 trillion global asset class. And a lot of the startups, whether, you think about like a hippo or a rhino, funny that I picked two sort of, animal ones, but the, big mammals here. But they are as much a insurtech as they are real estate tech plays. And it was a lot of fun to sort of try to bring everyone together. There were about, 750 folks that came to Blueprint that were not from ITC. And, we're going to be doing it next year in September. Unfortunately, we won't be able to overlap exactly with, ITC. But it was a lot of fun in the real estate tech space and a lot of fun to see the tentacles, sort of how obviously insurance, P&C, and real estate overlap.
No, there are more overlaps and soon there will be manifest also. So that will be another great, overlap, especially when we think about how insurance started, which was all about cargo, logistics, and selling your ships and hoping that they will come back, right? And with Blueprint, that's actually amazing. 700 people, and they're not from the insurance space? Because when you started in ITC, how many people showed up in the first conference?
We
600, no?
No, we actually had 1,500 people. We had 1,500 people.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Wow, double than that. Okay, never mind.
Yes,
Forget that I even asked.
No,
Yeah,
no,
never
no,
mind.
no. It was one of those things that snowballed. I'm pretty sure that I was thinking of like 4 to 5 weeks prior to ITC. We
Mm-hmm.
probably had 600 people in the first one. And it was just a crazy last couple weeks. I remember, we must have had 400 people in the last 2 weeks alone on the first ITC. And I couldn't believe how many of them were from overseas. And I thought, who in their right mind books a ticket like the week out or of a show, international ticket? So no, you were totally on point with your thoughts.
Yeah. So when is Manifest?
So
Talking about Lloyd's Coffee,
that's right.
when is Manifest?
So Manifest is January 25th through the 27th. It's at the Paris in Las Vegas. And,
Mm-hmm.
it is I thought for sure it was really funny going into ITC. I remember thinking as I was talking to the Manifest team, and Manifest is all around logistics tech. You think about logistics and supply chain, and the parallels between logistics and, insurance are actually like super, super interesting, not just the origin story of shipping and insurance. But I do remember that when I was talking to the Manifest team around the time of ITC and thinking, oh man, we've got this in the bag. The January time frame is going to be perfect. What could possibly go wrong, right? Or what could make it more interesting?
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, omicron. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like a deja vu from July, and August all over again. Absolutely. But this show is, on track to be about the size of ITC in its first year. And it's understandable why, even in the face of Omicron, and it's, the supply chain has become like a word that everyone knows and is experiencing. And, you think about insurance,
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows insurance. They don't always know what it is. They know that they need it or that it's there, but they don't necessarily know the impact that it can make on their life or how to think about it. And that's exactly what's happening here. There's been even more money in, I think in the third quarter of this year, there was something like $7 billion put into logistics tech startups. There are more unicorn private startups in logistics than there are in insurtech. It is, it truly is one of those spaces that is like you as a consumer or on the outside, you would have thought that it would have been solved for. And the more you dig in, the same thing with insurtech, and you hear, wait a second, like agents are still doing submissions by fax. How many of those?
Mm-hmm.
Like you just assume it's already been solved for, and the answer is it hasn't.
Yeah. And it's funny enough that one of the solutions, helping Michael Libor, he used to be with Amtrust. Now we started a new startup, Insurance Gig, which is sort of an insurance application marketplace. So technology, not insurance marketplace, right? Technology for insurance marketplace.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because most of the use cases that the bigger brokers are working with them, it's all about that small thing. Oh, we have a PDF, not fax. They already moved like 2 steps forward. There is a PDF. Now we need to grab that, digitalize it, start to structure it for Accord, this form of Accord, and integrate it with some sort of an AMS. Super simple, super simple. And that's before hitting, Relativity 6, Ascodiac, or any other of those solutions. And sometimes it's, mind-blowing, or just that we are still way behind. There is such a great opportunity. We hear all about the Lemonade Metromile acquisition, data acquisition, Hero acquisition, which is amazing by itself. And we can talk about it in a second. And all this fantastic new technology with AI, and there are still like those who are lagging behind because especially the agents, no one gave them enough love. And there is still such a blue ocean there that we can cover.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of like Zapier. I mean, I think, most of my early days, when I think about Insurance Gig, I do think about it much like the Zapier for, sort of insurance. And, and I think you're right. You mentioned AI. AI is obviously in 2016, people were talking about it, but it was very hard for people to say, name a use case of how AI works, and whether that was data ingestion of just more structured data, but using it to be more predictive, or if it was visual data and being able to use sort of visual data in ways to understand the world by applying, sort of the data. So it's been fun to see sort of AI become not, sort of like, I wouldn't say understood yet, but at least, kind of like known as a value add. And if we aren't using it, we might want to think about it. But again, like the one downside to AI is it requires a lot of data. And so it's sort of like you're only going to get what you put into it. And not everyone has the right amount of data, the structure of the data. Obviously you think about even the knowledge of how to use that data, but what does almost everyone need? It's like workflow. And so I've always been a fan of, sort of not just like marketplaces, but workflow, because there's one thing that says, okay, how do I get people to connect? But if you don't know what to do with that connection and you can't implement it, it falls like flat there. So yeah, I've long been a fan of workflow, and I will admit that I spend a fair amount of time in Zapier because I sort of poo-pooed it for a long time. And then, you start to play around with it and you go, all right, like this thing, it works. Like it saves time. It truly works.
Yeah, I tell you what, I've been trying to kick out this my habit of rolling my eyes every time someone tells me AI, because it's like, okay, well, is that a buzzword? Because once someone tells me, oh, we have AI, ML, and it's like, just tell me the functionality, when you talk about computer vision, yeah, what are you doing with that? Is that for object recognition? What are you measuring there? Just tell me the functionality. What is the goal that use the AI? Great. Predictions. What type of predictions? What are you predicting? So we finally get more and more, that deal with LTV that are trying. So I brought Relativity 6 as an example. So they are using AI. They started with predictions of churn. And now they realize that, they have this massive AI capability, but their focus is to understand what is the classification, commercial classification, the next codes. Very simple, very, laser focused. This is the value proposition and that's a functionality. I love that, right? Compared to we have AI, ML, and I don't know.
I would prefer
a 3D printer.
I don't want to see another pitch deck that says we are insert your tech buzzword company, an AI something company. It's different if literally you are providing AI in a box for people. You are an AI company or AI models, but the next, sort of like MGA that starts with we're an AI company. It's like, no, that it's not actually what you are. Like, I don't want to know that you're an AI company. Like, I want to know that you're going to pick better risk. Now, maybe AI helps you if you think you can do better underwriting risk. But at the end of the day, it's about being better at risk, or to your point, it's about being better at customer, retention, or there's something that we have that is able to create operational efficiencies. So, that the amount of money that we spend, internally relative to our revenue is, like lower than others. And if AI is a piece of that, great. But yeah, I just do not want to see another, we are an AI company pitch deck.
Talking about two other buzzwords or two other C's, cyber and crypto. Where are we standing on crypto? Are we going to do something with crypto and insurance?
So we did have a session, sort of like this year, and Jacqueline Lesage Krause moderated it on, essentially crypto and, sort of insurance. I think
wait, that's a follow-up. Cyber for crypto, that will be the follow-up question.
Yes. But I think the issue that we had, for instance, is it's like blockchain. We had a session in 2016 on blockchain, and, and I think it was and then we had a session on 2017 on blockchain. And I think the title was something like, because we feel like we have to. Like it was sort of saying that there's just this, it was such a buzzword. And yes, there were some consortiums, but no one had put it into practice in a way that was at scale. And thus, you think about crypto. Crypto is so far the killer's, sort of blockchain application. And, it will get to a point, where it actually helps people understand how to use it for others, but we're still super early, in that. Yes, there are a handful of companies that are trying to do insurance for crypto in some way, whether I'm an individual wallet holder and I have some protection, or you think about commercial lines insurance, like I'm a marketplace and I need some insurance over theft, type of things. But I think it's very hard to have something that is, sort of like at scale, but not well understood. And I think that to me is what crypto and cyber, kind of like have in common, which is, one of them is a very known threat and it's there, but arguable how well known it actually is truly from an underwriting, standpoint. The other is sort of like truly at scale. And the question mark of where is the angle here for us, and does it make sense? Because it's crypto at this moment, I think it's too broad. And what we have to do is narrow it down and make it very specific before we talk about it.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is for the audience. If you have a crypto insurance idea, please, I would really love to know what's the use case. Because and it's the same thing that Jay, what you said in time at the beginning, it was blockchain. What are we doing that? Okay, great. Smart contracts. Who is going to adopt it? How it's going to work? So NFTs, that will be sort of the smart contract. Now, if we are going to insure someone's wallet, do we know, okay, you need to know the wallet and how much cash. It's basically telling someone, let me insure your wallet, the cash that you have in your wallet. How would that work? Do you need to see where the cash is coming in and out? How do you underwrite it? And then you'll have the cybersecurity, cyber insurance that will be sort of on top of it, making sure to reduce the risk for theft of your personal. So that will be more for the personal lines. But if we are dealing more on the commercial, are we like going to create SIPC kind of organization or whatever, FIDC, I am not really sure about the federal something there, banks.
FDIC.
Yeah. Well, dyslexia, awesome.
No, you can blame it on being Israeli. There you go.
Sure, same, but different. We write from right to left.
It's sort of like very matrixy, and it's sort of very almost circular or meta. But that's the problem with meta. Not meta in the Facebook company, like meta in the way that it used to be known. Because you have, cyber is purely digital, but crypto is purely digital, and they absolutely go together in some, sort of capacity. But it is, I think, it may be the first time that as we're talking about insurance, everything is purely digital. It's not a component, it's digital. It's not using digital to augment. We're not talking about a digital twin in some capacity. We're not talking about a data lake in saying, how do we look at our data in a digital way? We're not talking about digitization of offline data. You're talking about something that is literally only online. And that's a completely new paradigm, which means that it's almost the antithesis of what insurance is meant for. Is it's been designed historically for physical things. And you said it best, there is no such thing today as wallet insurance. Instead, it's you insure your home, you insure a thing, you insure, catastrophe against that thing. There's interruption, there's all sorts of things, but not the there's not bank account insurance. And to your point, there's FDIC, but that's deposits. That's not, there's no underwriting of that. There's just limits, right?
That's in case. So that will be, for example, in case that the bank is going through bankruptcy, or your investment, or something happens over there, right?
But that's not reinsurers. That's not classic carriers. It may have the insurance component name, but it's not. And so I think that's actually the piece that does make it super interesting, which is what of this is insurable or should be insurable versus there's a risk here. There's a threat of losing my wallet. Well, but what we've decided is not, you should just get insurance on your wallet. What we've decided is the credit cards make it super easy to turn them off or recognize fraud. Yep. The, replacement is sort of there, and protection against charges, but that goes on the companies, like the credit card companies. It's not an insurance product. So it's interesting. And even theft.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, even theft today is a very small piece of the homeowner's insurance, right? Like you have to really specify it. It's not like your default thing, right? It's like usually the limits are pretty low unless you know to ask that I want sort of theft. So fascinating in the sense that like the biggest risk that we hear about today in crypto is theft. It doesn't translate very well to, it's a classic insurance risk.
Yeah, and let's differentiate if we are talking about theft between burglary. It's like, hey, are you on the fourth floor, first ground floor, or 10th floor? Difference of burglary, right? Different underwriting. And then there is, if we are going back to, if we are using the SIPC or FDIC example, is that going to work only for the exchanges? Because let's assume you have Robinhood, you have a little bit of crypto there. If they are going to be hacked, is that going to be covered? Or if your small mom pop business has a crypto wallet and that's going to be stolen or hacked or most likely an employee mistake, is that a business interruption? Right. So there are all kinds of weird
Yeah,
use cases,
yeah.
but none of them is there because how many small businesses has a crypto wallet? I don't
And
know,
I guess
zero, two.
to your point, I mean, at some notion, it's not a crazy notion to say that if I'm going to get crypto insurance, I might want to pay for it using crypto. But you think about
Mm-hmm.
sort of the volatility. It's like automatic deductions. Like you could take infinitesimal amounts of someone's coin to pay for the insurance over time, and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be very different than having to put a card on file because you're tapped right into the wallet. But it's another, like, I think, fascinating thing that insurance companies are used to getting hard currency, and and then they play the investment spread with that money, right? Take the premiums and invest it, or like life insurance. How do you,
Yep.
you think about like creating annuities products. There's essentially one time there's creating spread, there's other times there's borrowing, and how do you manage borrowing. And so they're used to some level of volatility, but I don't know the extent to which they would be comfortable with the currency itself that they are insuring and the thing that they're getting paid in. That's where the volatility is. It's rolled all in one. I don't know.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, but we can table it for now.
It's something that I'm interested in. And, if you were to ask me, hey, what are some of the new shows that you're going to do in the future? It's not going to be crypto, but there will almost certainly be one on decentralized finance.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, I think we're looking really a lot into. I'm fascinated by a world where the like electric vehicles, the new electric world, and
So is it
certainly infrastructure.
mobility? So is it mobility,
It's
infrastructure,
infrastructure. It's infrastructure.
info?
Infrastructure. Now, I'm a
Hmm.
car guy. I love mobility, but mobility is not really a vertical yet, and
Mm-hmm.
mobility is getting solved for by the private sector. Infrastructure needs a very good public-private collaboration to basically enable the future that we all think is going to be there, but it's not going to be done by government alone, and it's not going to be done by private sector alone. So, and I
So
think
it's a
so. It's a
combination.
fascinating topic.
How much the budget that Biden, how much was passed?
I
3 trillion, 4 trillion?
think it was only like 1.5 trillion or 1.8 trillion of that, and I think the money for that starts to flow middle of next year out.
Okay. So if you have an old bridge nearby you and you think that it needs a little bit of work and there is cool technology that will help it, yeah, we can have a conference around that bridge.
Oh, yes, yes. We'll make a bridge for the bridges, but I think no, and this is it. Like when most people think infrastructure, they think of the classic definition of 50 years ago or even 20 years ago, and that was the like just repaving roads or putting roads where they weren't there before. But the new definition, and I think this is part of what's interesting to me,
Mm-hmm.
is the new definition of infrastructure is that it is not just, it is kind of this idea of a digital twin. It is not just redoing a road, but it's, or putting a road where one didn't exist. It's how does that road handle the future, where the future is going to be 3D. It's going to be, there's going to be a digital future of it. There's going to be a flying future of it. And there's going to be an autonomous future of it, an electric future of it. So, this stuff to happen you have to have a rethinking of what the definition of infrastructure really means. And that's the conversation I don't think is happening and could benefit by people getting together.
That's actually very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff that we've, that I've heard about is this notion of, and there isn't a single definition, but it's one of the more intriguing ones, because we've been talking so much about the cloud. The problem with the cloud, right, is so much is stored on the cloud, but it has to get deployed at a really local or regional level. And that is a challenge right now. And so you'll hear a lot around the edge, or edge technology for the edge computing, and it can mean several things. But the idea of, if you're going to have an autonomous vehicle or an autonomous truck that goes from A to B, there is a road, but the current Wi-Fi and cell infrastructure is just not there to handle it at scale. And so a lot of what is having to be figured out now is, how do you get deployments of tech at the hyper local level, and not just in a data center that, where it gets deployed over the airways, so to speak. So I think we'll hear more about that, but it's just one of the many, kind of like new things to wrap your head around as we try to like move into like the future. Like there's a gap. We know that by 2030, the vast majority of car companies are going to make only electric cars, but there's so much of a question mark in between. You think about I don't know if you've used like a ride share where you rent somebody else's car, but even the charging infrastructure isn't there. So like, what's that experience like? You're going to go to the grocery store if you still do, or go to a movie if you still do, but it'll also be your charging station. Are there going to be roads that have electricity running underneath them? So there's, sort of this zero, there's some cool term about the like infinite charge. But so many problems that have to be solved if this future is going to be met. And that's why I say it's not private or public, it's public and private together.
That's very interesting, very intriguing, because most of the conversation that we had earlier were more about smart cities and how they operate internally. How do you understand, from supporting the population, the traffic, and many other things that goes with that, right? So energy that comes in, produce, and of course everything that needs to go out with the city and process, so we'll have a good quality life. And this is how you connect actually the cities, and more than that. And I can sort of connect it to my conversation with Ian White from Coffee Labs and their focus, which is about a commercial fleet of trucks, and the fact that the trucks themselves nowadays have more and more risk. It depends on the car, less on the driver, because the car itself, actually the truck, is almost autonomous. From the brakes to the technology to everything there, it's more about the truck, less about the driver. And if we are taking that infrastructure, and you're talking about whatever will come after 5G, although 5G is not fully deployed and we don't see that, and that will provide a 1 giga, over the air, it's going to be very interesting, especially as we move that to electric vehicles, trucks, etc., etc. Yeah. At the same time, we'll have a bigger problem, which will be for the metals and minerals that we need to have all of that electronic. So, hey, I cannot recommend any securities purchase, but think about what it means for electronics, and so we can have all of that goods.
Oh yeah, yes. We're going to get into some major geopolitical conversations there. We'll avoid it for now.
Yes, Let's keep that.
But
okay, cool.
Like a thought, probably more in closing, given how long I feel like we've been chatting. But is something I never really thought about. But like, smart cities is a term that is like so hard to understand. Same thing with, I think it was like Industry 4.0. Yeah, great terms for consultants, but terrible
Amazing.
terms for, the rest of us. But the one
Yep.
that is starting to be more and more interesting to me and starting to coalesce, not fully, but is that idea of like a digital twin. And you, like you said, you think about the truck that's there, that's almost autonomous, but is made up of a whole bunch of smart systems. It's made up of cargo that's inside of it. Like that's part of the future that we haven't untouched, which is this, sort of this digital twin of that truck, and that ties into the smart city. Like, where is that truck? Like, what are the components of that truck? That unlocks, I think, a whole new universe of development on it. Because you think about, what did the web do, right? The web connected everyone, and it allowed, sort of essentially, right, this digital twin of one's self to exist in a lot of ways, and it enabled a lot of commerce. But I think we're just getting into that next layer of the next version of connectivity that's going to unlock the next, sort of like ecosystem of which to develop on top of. Because like, it's not just that smart city, it's the digital twin of the store and the smart city, which is now no longer a website, but it's inventory, right? It's everything that, is there. And how to experience this digital twin, which will combine physical and in person. So I don't know, there's certainly a there. I won't claim to like understand it. And I won't claim that it will change anyone's lives next year.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. And I will ask you the same question I asked you last year. So, but this time we have actually a time, Zach. So in the past year, what did you learn? Give us a recommendation or something to look at.
What did I learn? I learned a lot
so
more
usually
about
ask for a recommendation.
Yes.
Okay. Now, besides that, we are more looking at a recommendation. So
I will probably give a very similar answer that I gave, sort of like last year, which is
I'll check.
Which was go to ITC. Right, there you go.
Okay,
that's
cool.
the recommendation, or manifest, or both, or blueprint. I think the connectivity piece is, ultimately key. Don't forget the relationships. Don't get caught up in the hyper obsessive funding. Continue to solve a problem, and make sure that the problem is something that is someone's pain point. And if you can continue to do that, there's a lot. It doesn't matter if you focus on capacity or capital or customers. If there's a pain point,
or caribou,
but continue to focus on a pain point, because that attracts the capital and the customers at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Jay, thank you very much for this new tradition.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'll talk to you in 12 months.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.